there, folks. The colors on that slide in front of you are fake. That's a picture taken of the refuge, and if you know the refuge here, you know the trees don't turn red. I made them as red or redder as an Appalachian fall. Pure fakery. Piling one culture on top of another. And that's going to be our theme for this quite recently added, or immediately added, and for you folks getting it the first time, lecture here, Cultural Appropriation. It starts with a student's thoughts that got me thinking about ebony hands on an ivory key, or the things that we borrow for our predominant culture from specific cultural groups and just take them and make them ours, and by and large don't give credit for them. So let's talk about that. Hey, we make a big deal about plagiarism, intellectual plagiarism, crediting other people with their ideas and such as that. Yes, nothing comes out of our brains just woof like Venus popping out of the head of Jupiter or whatever like that. No, it doesn't work that way. We borrow. We borrow when we give credit, or we steal. And stealing from a culture, yes. What is it? Is it admiration? We can easily say admiration when we talk about the British stealing from the Greeks, all of those classic notions and such as that, because they lighted Plato and Aristotle's names in lights and treated them like deities. But what about when we steal from other places, less known people we adamantly and manifestly don't treat like deities? We treat them by and large like servants, inferiors, all sorts of ways you're not supposed to treat people. Now, the theft itself, is it a necessary part of the creative process? Well, probably. Like I said, ideas don't form all by themselves in our brains. We learn, we modify, we add our trains and touches to the thoughts of others. But if we're just flat out stealing from somebody else, or that is not crediting, is that cultural plagiarism? Is cultural appropriation allowed and reasonable, or just how unallowed is it, or should it be? We can think about some folks who complain very loudly. Indians or Native Americans, choose your term, whichever said Indian or Native American prefers. That's the way that goes on the naming. But we think about their complaints, quite vigorous about cultural appropriation. They have reasons for it. I mean, we stole the whole land of the country. We're going to steal their culture too. Well, so we come to cultural elements. I, for example, would write a good bit about Thunderbirds, the Thunderbird myth and connections, because I've always had a taste for thunderstorms, preferably from a distance, mind you, and such as that. And there are archetypal elements that go with that image that are so rich and beautiful. But hey, by and large, I do a hands-off. Why? Because I can't just appropriate that for my purposes. It wouldn't be honest. The images don't come out of my culture. Do I have something of my own for thunderstorms and such? Probably have a few things I can borrow from the Greeks and modify and pull out of Romantic literature, and that's my culture. I'm allowed those. Now, Neil Gaiman appropriates Thunderbirds. They show up in American Gods, but he does have a contextual excuse because he is pulling deities, mythological figures, cultural folk figures, and such from many cultures. The Thunderbird fits in, as does his Whiskey Jack, who seems to be largely Native American, and such as that. And Gaiman is putting everyone into an American context. He really is talking about the way we modify our cultures. It's a different thing. We can get away with that, I think. But hey, we turn around here and think about, from that Langston Hughes poem we just looked at, the ebony hand on each ivory key, and we have that ivory key in the audience. Our ivory hands here. If I can get my hand in front of the camera, there it's in front of the camera. My dear white ivory hand here to go with this. So, yes, a black man's song. I've got a typo in there. Black man's song geared to, given to a white audience. But now, what does the white audience do with the blues? Well, Hughes's audience is going to sit and appreciate them, but what did we do with the blues? We stole them. Boy, did we ever. Think about early rock and rollers, Elvis Presley and the people before that. They were appropriating blues sound, blues riffs, and such as that. Then you step into the real electronic apex of rock and roll when these folks were doing art, or I told you they were anyhow, whether or not you agree with me, and such. Where did all of this come from? Well, the musicians, likely to be jazz trained. Some had more roots with Appalachian and Celtic folk music, but a lot of them were jazz trained, particularly the ones who did the long improvisational riffs and the heavy electronic sounds and such. And jazz derived directly a product of the blues. It is black music. Long creative riffs, again, black or jazz improvisation. And then singing the blues, Janis Joplin, looked at that poem of her brief tragic life. She sang blues style. She sang real blues. Her rendition of Big Mama Thornton's Ball and Chain is one of her, really moving things. Some of the other rock bands, not just folks we think about with rock, who were trained in jazz, but Tracy Nelson and Mother Earth, or Mother Earth, which Tracy Nelson said, it seems to have become me and I didn't feel like being the entirety of Mother Earth. But Mother Earth did jazz or jazz style. Really, a lot of their music was jazz adapted to fit with rock, like electric guitars, and you throw in the jazz horns to go with it, and Tracy Nelson singing loud, raucous blues style, more voice even than Janis Joplin, less gravel, but more volume. Hey, where'd this come from? We stole it. Yeah, we stole it. You, no doubt, would have your own examples, your contemporary ones, the ones you're familiar with from the pop culture of this day, which is a few years past mine. I'm getting old on you folks, but it's generationally different, but it's the same thing. You can think about those. My live class is going to get the chance to talk about those. So, is it ethical? Is it right? Is it just the way we were? way we are. A lot of it is just the way we are. Creativity is derivative. It has to work that way. You cannot create new things until you have something to add to your experience to pull them in. But credit is due. Why don't we offer it? Why don't we offer it particularly to Black musicians? Why do we grab these things, pull ourselves away from the raw-edged original, and then having, in some cases, sanitized it, in other cases, just flat out appropriated it, call it ours, and forget the source? That's our little lecture on cultural appropriation that fits some of the material we have been looking at here.